June 14, 2025, the USS Princeton began its daily operations. It was supposed to be just another of the many routine patrols on the South China Sea. But at the end of that day, it was the closest the world has ever been to a Third World War. What happens when two superpowers play chicken on the world's most dangerous waters? This is the story of how China tried to bait the United States into starting a war. If you've ever watched the sun rise on a beach, then you have an idea of what that morning on the South China Sea looked like. Golden light dancing across seemingly peaceful waters. But beneath this calm surface lay one of the world's most dangerous waterways, where $3.4 trillion worth of global trade passes every year. At exactly 9:23 a.m. on June 14, 2025, USS Princeton's radar operator watched his screen display something that would nearly spark World War III. A Chinese Type 052D destroyer, previously cruising at a steady 18 knots like a tourist on vacation, suddenly surged forward, accelerating to 30 knots in under 90 seconds. Think of it like a car suddenly flooring the gas pedal on a busy highway, except this car was armed with enough missiles to sink a city. But what the Americans didn't know would shock them even more. Unknown to the Americans monitoring their radar screens, the Chinese destroyer captain had just received encrypted orders from Beijing. Intercept the Americans, make them blink first. It was like ordering someone to play chicken with a freight train. Beijing was about to learn why challenging the US Navy in open water has been a terrible idea for the past 75 years. They were about to get a very expensive education. The USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group had been conducting what's called freedom of navigation operations, essentially keeping international shipping lanes open for business. Picture the world's most powerful security guard making sure everyone can use the highway safely. These waters carry everything from the smartphone in your pocket to the car your family drives, all protected by American naval power. Everything was about to change in exactly 17 minutes. At 9:26 a.m., the Princeton's identification was complete. They faced a Type 052D destroyer, China's most modern warship, carrying enough firepower to threaten any single ship. But here's what made this situation fascinating. Inside Princeton's Combat Information Center, the tactical officer watched this threat with the calm confidence of someone holding a royal flush in poker. The Princeton carried 122 vertical launch missiles, enough firepower to turn any surface ship into fish food. The spy radar system, imagine having Superman's X-ray vision but for naval warfare, painted such a clear picture that operators could practically count the windows on the Chinese ship. The math was simple but terrifying. At current speed, the destroyer would reach missile range in exactly 17 minutes. But the Chinese had made one critical miscalculation. Their YG-18 missiles could cover the remaining distance in 4 minutes once launched. Impressive, right? Wrong. The Princeton's SM-6 missiles could reach out 240 nautical miles. That's like shooting from New York to Philadelphia and destroy incoming threats before they came anywhere close to American ships. It was like bringing a knife to a gunfight, except the gun was a guided missile system. At 9:29, when the captain asked about Chinese intentions, the answer was obvious to anyone who understood naval warfare. The recommendation came immediately. "Captain, we should go to battle stations now." But the captain's response revealed why America dominates the world's oceans. Let's see how badly they want to embarrass themselves first. Meanwhile, 46 civilian ships had no idea they were about to witness history. The South China Sea that morning looked like a busy intersection during rush hour. 46 merchant vessels within 50 miles, all depending on American protection. A container ship from Singapore carried computer chips worth hundreds of millions. A South Korean tanker transported $200 million in liquefied natural gas. If China succeeded in claiming these international waters, global trade would collapse overnight. But that required them to actually defeat the US Navy, something that's never happened. At 9:30, something remarkable occurred that shows why American naval technology leads the world. The Princeton's computers automatically shared all threat information with every American ship in the area, instantly. Think of it like a group chat but for weapon systems. The Chinese were about to face not one ship, but an entire network. The USS Nimitz herself, A floating city weighing 104,600 tons and carrying 90 advanced aircraft adjusted her operations with clockwork precision. The destroyers USS Changhoon and USS Kidd moved into protective positions that would turn any Chinese attack into a suicide mission. The trap was set. All that is left is for China to spring it. At 9:35, the situation escalated from dangerous to explosive. An American E-2D Hawkeye aircraft detected multiple aircraft launching from the Chinese carrier Shandong. These were J-15 fighters climbing desperately toward American positions. But the Chinese pilots faced an embarrassing problem. Their aircraft were struggling to gain altitude because of fuel limitations. Here's why. Chinese carriers use ski jump launches instead of catapults. It's like the difference between using a slingshot versus a cannon. Both might work, but one is clearly superior. Without catapults, Chinese fighters launched with reduced fuel and weapons, already disadvantaged before the fight began. But the real surprise was hiding underwater. 1 minute later, sonar operators detected the final piece of China's battle plan, a Type 039 submarine lurking 80 nautical miles away. In submarine warfare, silence means survival. This Chinese sub was making so much noise, it sounded like a freight train underwater. Any professional submarine crew would have been mortified. The Chinese weren't just being aggressive, they were attempting coordinated intimidation using outdated technology. Surface ships from the 1990s, carrier aircraft that couldn't carry full weapon loads, and submarines loud enough to wake sleeping fish. It was classic bullying behavior that only works against weak opponents. And with that, China had just revealed a three-part plan using equipment from the 1990s. Unfortunately for Beijing, they just challenged the wrong opponent in the wrong place. By 9:37, the USS Nimitz's flight deck transformed into controlled chaos that only American carriers can orchestrate. FA-18E Super Hornets launched at 45-second intervals, precision timing that Chinese ski jump carriers could never match. Steam erupted from catapult tracks as American naval aviation demonstrated what power projection really means. It was like watching Formula One drivers race against horse-drawn carriages. The first Super Hornets climbed through 15,000 feet, their advanced radars already painting incoming Chinese fighters at maximum range. The technological difference was almost unfair. American radar could track dozens of targets simultaneously, while Chinese radar swept back and forth like an old-fashioned lighthouse. But the weapons and fuel difference was just what you could see. The real advantage was invisible. American aircraft were networked together like smartphones. Every F-18 connected through something called Link 16. When one pilot saw a threat, every pilot saw it instantly. Chinese pilots relied on voice radio and individual sensors, like trying to coordinate a basketball team while everyone wore blindfolds. The EA-18G Growlers entered combat without firing a single weapon. These electronic warfare aircraft carried jamming equipment that could disrupt enemy electronics from 100 miles away. Imagine having a device that could turn off every smartphone in your city from across town. Chinese communications began breaking apart like a bad cell phone connection. On Chinese radar screens, reality became fiction. Ghost contacts multiplied everywhere. American fighters appeared and disappeared, split into multiple false images. What looked like 4 F-18s became 12, then 20. Chinese pilots found themselves chasing electronic phantoms, while real American aircraft maneuvered unseen. Meanwhile, Americans executed a formation that had never been defeated. The Americans used a tactical formation called the Wall. Fighters at multiple altitudes, creating overlapping defensive zones. High fighters at 35,000 feet, medium at 25,000, low at 15,000. No matter where Chinese aircraft tried to attack, they'd enter someone's missile range. The Chinese formation remained bunched together because their technology couldn't support anything else. Chinese pilots had to maintain visual contact with each other to coordinate attacks, making them predictable and vulnerable. It was like trying to win a chess game when your opponent could see all your moves in advance. But China's biggest humiliation was still coming. At 2:30 p.m., the USS Nimitz launched its largest air demonstration in years. 48 aircraft roared into the afternoon sky. Super Hornets with live weapons, electronic warfare aircraft carrying city-sized jamming power, and command aircraft controlling the electromagnetic battlefield. The sky darkened with American air power. Then came the psychological masterstroke that ended everything. At 3:47 p.m., a Virginia-class attack submarine that had been secretly following the Chinese fleet for 8 days decided to introduce itself. This submarine surfaced just 6 nautical miles from the Chinese carrier, close enough for sailors to see it with binoculars. 8 days. The Chinese Navy's entire anti-submarine defense had failed completely. Think about this. Helicopters, sonar buoys, and hull-mounted detection systems. China's entire submarine hunting network had failed to detect a 7,900-ton American submarine for over a week. If this had been actual warfare, their aircraft carrier would already be resting on the ocean floor. But the American submarine commander wasn't finished making his point. The submarine burst from the water like a breaching whale, water cascading dramatically in the afternoon sun. Chinese photographers captured perfect images of American undersea dominance. After 90 seconds, enough time for everyone to see, photograph, and report to Beijing, it disappeared beneath the waves like a ghost. The message was crystal clear. We own the underwater domain. By 4:23 p.m., the Chinese carrier strike group began withdrawing. Official Chinese communications claimed they were completing scheduled exercises, but everyone monitoring radio frequencies knew the truth. They'd arrived to intimidate lawful navigation and claim waters that didn't belong to them. Instead, they received a comprehensive education in why the South China Sea remains what military experts call America's sixth Great Lake. The rules hadn't changed. Challenge the U.S. Navy in open water and discover why that's still the world's most expensive mistake. What happened during those 7 hours wasn't just another naval encounter. It demonstrated that technological superiority, operational experience, and professional training still determine who controls the world's oceans. China came looking for American weakness and found only overwhelming strength. Want to see more examples of modern naval warfare? Check our video, How One Ukrainian Drone Sank Russia's Most Advanced Warship. Link in the description below.